All right, today we're stepping right into what you could call a political pressure cooker. We're going to break down the immense, and I mean immense, forces closing in on Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, literally from all sides. War often has this effect of uniting a nation behind its leader. But for Benjamin Netanyahu, it seems like the conflict that kicked off on October 7th has only put a pause on what many are calling a day of reckoning. And this isn't just about the war itself, right? It's really about everything that comes after. So, Netanyahu is legendary for his political survival skills. I mean, they call him the magician for a reason. But the big question is he finally facing a crisis so huge that even he can't pull a rabbit out of the hat? That's what we're here to figure out. We're going to break down all the pressures closing in on him from every single angle. Okay, here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at that postponed political reckoning at home. What the public is thinking. Then, we'll dive into his internal power plays, the escalating war on a second front, and the world's plan for Gaza. And we'll wrap it all up by asking, what does all of this mean for his legacy? All right, first up, the Day of Reckoning. So, right after October 7th, Israel really came together. But you have to understand that unity, it was like a super thin layer of ice over these massive political cracks that were literally splitting the country apart just the day before. Yeah, let's just rewind the clock for a second. All through 2023, we saw hundreds of thousands of Israelis flooding the streets week after week. They were protesting Netanyahu's super controversial plan to overhaul the judiciary. The country was at an absolute boiling point. And that anger, it didn't just disappear. It's just been simmering under the surface. And that simmering division, well, it brings us right to our second point, the incredible pressure coming from the Israeli people themselves. Politicians might have quieted down at first, but public opinion, oh, it has been loud and crystal clear. Just look at this number, 15%. According to recent polls, that's the percentage of Israelis who want Netanyahu to stay on as prime minister after the war is over. For any leader, let alone one in the middle of a war, that number is just shockingly low. So if you flip that, you've got a staggering 85% of the country that's ready for a change. And get this, it's not just his political rivals saying this. Here's the real kicker for Netanyahu. A majority of voters from his own party, Likud, think he should step down. And all that feeling, it's boiling over again, right back onto the streets. The same protest movement from before the war, it's back. Only now, it's fueled by this deep anger over the security failures of October 7th and how the hostage crisis has been handled. And those calls for elections now, they're getting louder by the day. So with all this public pressure mounting, what's Netanyahu doing? Well, he's doing what he's famous for, playing the political game to ensure his own survival. And that brings us to the intense power plays happening right now inside his own government. You can see a really clear pivot in his strategy here. Before the war, it was all about that judicial overhaul, right? Now, it is all about survival, plain and simple. He's ramming through a massive war budget to keep his coalition happy. He's making moves to replace security chiefs he's blaming for what happened, and he's doing everything he can to lock down his right-wing base. I mean, this is classic Netanyahu. These are his signature survival moves. Lock down the budget, juggle all the tricky demands from his coalition partners, and try to assert control over a security establishment that, in his view, is responsible for the failures of October 7th. But look, the pressure isn't just internal. Not by a long shot. A second, and frankly, incredibly dangerous front has opened up. While most of the world's attention has been on Gaza, the conflict with Hezbollah on the northern border with Lebanon, it's been escalating. We're talking about a potential all-out war. And this chart, wow, it really tells the whole story. For nearly a year, the fighting up there was kind of low level, a back and forth thing. But then, look at that spike. In late September 2024, Israeli strikes jumped by more than 4 times. This isn't just a skirmish anymore, folks. This is a major, major escalation, and it threatens to drag the entire region into a much bigger conflict. So you might be asking, what's the background here? Well, a key piece of this whole puzzle is a UN resolution, number 1701. The whole point of it was to create a buffer zone, totally free of Hezbollah fighters south of the Litani River in Lebanon. The problem? Hezbollah never actually left, and their military presence right there on Israel's border is the fundamental reason Israel says this escalation is absolutely necessary to protect its northern towns.
And all this fighting, it leads us straight to our fifth pressure point, the international community. Because while Israel is fighting this war, the rest of the world, especially the US and its allies, is already making plans for the day after in Gaza. And well, their vision is on a direct collision course with Netanyahu's.
So here's the plan that's gaining global consensus. It's got 4 main parts. 1, a sustained ceasefire and getting the hostages released. 2, bringing in an international stabilization force. 3, having a reformed Palestinian Authority come back to govern Gaza. And 4, a huge, multi-billion-dollar plan to rebuild. This is pretty much the roadmap the US and its allies are pushing, and they're pushing hard. And here's the roadblock. Netanyahu has flat out rejected the core of that plan. He will not allow the Palestinian Authority, which, remember, is run by the rival Fatah party, to return to Gaza. His quote really says it all. "I won't allow Hamastan to be replaced by Fatahstan." That pretty much creates a major diplomatic showdown with his closest allies. And the pressure doesn't just stop with Gaza. Oh no, the European Union and others are also leaning on Israel about these bigger issues, demanding they release frozen tax revenues that belong to the Palestinian Authority and halt settlement expansion in the West Bank. It's basically a full-court diplomatic press from all sides. Okay, so you've got all these forces converging on him, right? Pressure from the public, from inside his own government, from the entire world, which brings us to our final question. Is this the last stand for Israel's great political survivor? How is this moment going to define his entire legacy? And this is where you see the 2 completely different stories about his legacy clashing. To his supporters, he's Bibi, the ultimate fighter, right? The only one strong enough to protect Israel and stand up to pressure. But to his critics, he's a leader who is so focused on craving power and playing internal politics that he left Israel completely vulnerable to the worst attack in its history. So that leaves us with the ultimate question, doesn't it? Are we watching a masterclass in political survival, or is this the final chapter for a leader who is finally facing the verdict of history? The truth is, that verdict is still being written. Thanks so much for joining me.